organized a little bit more, and I welcome you. Good afternoon. My name is Anna, and I'll be your host for this panel this afternoon. And our goal is to give you a broad overview, a first overview of what we think you should maybe know when you're interested in becoming an entrepreneur or maybe start your own company. For that reason, we invited 4 experts with, I have to say, quite impressive backgrounds. And before I go and introduce those 4 to you a little bit more closely, I would like to learn a little bit more about you. And maybe that's also interesting for you. So please raise your hand. First question, who is currently a researcher in an academic setting, like doctoral student, all right. Okay. Who's a postdoc already? All right. And doctoral student? All right. Okay. Perfect. Is there anyone here who is currently in the private sector industry somehow? All right. Oh, okay. All right. Okay. Anyone of you who is a founder actually as well? All right. Okay. Very good. Is there anyone who works at a nonprofit? Okay. Perfect. Public sector? Well, everything here. Perfect. Wonderful. Thank you. And is there anyone here who's not in STEM, who's in social sciences or the humanities? All right. Okay. A few at least. And the rest of you, I assume, is somehow related to STEM. All right, thank you so much. So we know, I think, a little bit more about our audience. And I would like to start my little introduction with you, Samar. You're quite humble. You're saying you're an early career researcher at the University of Cambridge. So what do you do at the University of Cambridge as an early career researcher?
Yeah, so that's a fancy term for a PhD student.
All right.
So actually, my PhD research is totally different from the startup. I look for sustainable materials to replace materials in data storage technologies, whereas my startup studies photocatalysis for sunlight-driven water purification.
Okay, that was very quick. That was very quick. I think we didn't get all of this. So I have to say, you have a startup as well, and you're chief strategy officer.
Yes.
What does it mean exactly when you're chief strategy
officer?
So
it means, essentially what I do is look for new partnerships and strategize how to move forward with our business and with the technology. So one thing that I take care of is co-creation with the end user, specifically working in Tanzania. So we work together with the locals there to develop the technology together and to strategize how to best implement it.
And that technology, I think you said, oh, it's great that you have this this little clean water cube here. So can you talk a little bit more about what actually your company does and what it's called?
Yeah, so I was a bit upset that Sustainable Development Goal 6 is hidden somewhere. This is what our business takes care of. Or trying to take care of. So essentially 2,300 people die each day from waterborne diseases. There's more children under the age of 5 that die from waterborne diseases compared to HIV, cancer, and tuberculosis combined. So it's a huge problem. It's becoming worse with rapid urbanization. And there's a huge water bottle market, for example, in sub-Saharan Africa, where most of the people that need the water can't afford the water. So we at Magical, we're developing very frugal, cost-effective water purification systems using only the sun's power to purify river water or even tap water and then serve it to the local population. And our co-creation approach, which I mentioned earlier, is very important because we designed the technology with the people, it's implemented by the locals, and it's for the benefit of the locals.
And is there a direct connection between what you do as a researcher and what kind of knowledge goes into your product, or is it different?
So I am a material scientist by training, so there is a material aspect that I deal with. However, I'm mostly dealing with the partnership building, strategizing, so it's a bit different in terms of the science that I'm dealing with. However, the skills that I've learned help me actually get into this position.
All right. Okay. And one last question. If you could live a parallel life, what else would you like to do?
Wow. I think I would be doing exactly what I'm doing now. It's a very cliche answer, but I just love what I do, and I think maybe you'll learn later that I think our passion drives us to what we're doing now, and without this passion, we wouldn't be doing what we're doing. So.
That was a good answer. I often learn that quite generally STEM people, they're often also very skilled in like in arts or music or something. So whenever I ask STEM people, they said, "Oh, I also would have liked to become a musician or a painter or something." Is that true for any of you? Like, are you artsy? Some of you? Carsten, are you artsy?
No, I suck at playing music and arts. I'm sorry.
Okay.
No, I agree, but I don't know you.
Okay.
Maybe you want to sing something?
Bernhard? No? No?
No, maybe photography, but then just because of the technology aspect, not so much of the
Okay,
art
photography. So maybe parallel life, become like a famous photographer. Maybe. Okay.
Maybe.
Okay. Bernhard, maybe we keep going on with you. And I really liked your little introduction. So the panelists they sent the moderator like little introductions beforehand, and I really liked Bernhard's because he's studying engineering science and he likes fire. So he's dealing with combustion science. And I really especially like the sentence, please listen. During my PhD, I was in need of a device that was capable of controlling a 900 degrees Celsius airstream in milliseconds. Basically, you needed to control a deadly weapon. Is that right?
Yeah, not for a weapon, but basically yes.
But basically yes. But basically yes. All right. So you somehow succeeded with this. So you found something, and then this something turned into a company.
That's right.
And how did that happen?
Ooh, that was a long process, to be honest. So I did my diploma thesis with some fluidic devices, and then I worked in my PhD with the same device, controlling combustion, controlling explosions, enhancing mixing. And I was discussing with my colleagues with whom I did my PhD with, and we were sitting in the office and we were thinking about, okay, we can adapt this to this one and this one and this one and this one. And so we discussed maybe we should start a company with this. And so basically this was a couple of years of discussion and talking to people if this is viable or not.
Okay, we get into that a little bit deeper later. And your company is called FDX. It's not, don't mess it up with FedEx.
No.
No, it's FDX. And we will learn a little bit more about that. I'm very interested in that, especially about that Airstream. And wonderful. Then we have, on the other side, we have Carsten. Carsten, and I was like reading your little introduction, and I was like, holy cow, that is really quite impressive. You started out studying biology, then received a PhD in chemistry, and because that's not enough, you thought, maybe I'll also do an MBA in Berlin and Cambridge.
It was this or playing online poker, and I was very good at playing online poker, but like I thought, doing something for your mind and to kind of grow a bit more would be helpful in future.
But is this where the money came from, the online poker?
Actually, money came from online poker, yes. I was playing that while I was doing my PhD, and since I'm a bit rebellious, I kind of wasn't best friends with my supervisor, and so he raised the bars for me, and I had to hand in 3 first authorships for my PhD study, which is quite something when doing chemistry. So I had quite a long time, like I finished after 2 years my PhD, but had to wait another 2 years until my my publications went through. And so I asked myself what to do now. And I actually financed part of my PhD through playing online poker back then. Oh. And because you have time, of course, you're waiting for experiments and so on and so forth, so you can play. But then I thought maybe it's something nicer because I'm quite a systems thinker, and I've learned systems in biology, like it's a mixture of chemistry, physics, and biology. And so I was interested in man-made systems and what to do better than studying economics for learning them.
Or you could have studied Luhmann in sociology systems. Yeah?
I could have, right.
But
damn it, I should do that.
But economics it was, and then, we dig into that a little bit deeper. You were a consultant, and then all of a sudden you became CEO of a high-tech transfer company. as we all do, just become a CEO. And then you co-founded something that is called Cold Plasma Tech. And just in like one line, what do you do?
At Cold Plasma Tech, we developed a Star Trek-like medical device that provides solution to two of the biggest problems in modern medicine, chronic wounds and multi-resistant bacteria.
Very
One
good.
sentence.
Very, very good. This is actually quite interesting because you can learn how to do a good elevator pitch, especially using words like Star Trek-like medical device. I think that's...
It's actually quite important to have bridges, because what we do is mostly technology that's very, very hard to understand. So if I would tell you something about like normal pressure plasma working on different fields, electromagnetic fields and so on, no one would get it. However, if I tell someone, oh, do you know the Star Trek device, this little handheld device that emits a blue light, and when you cut yourself, you go over it and then the wound closes, everyone says, oh yeah, I've seen that. Then I'm saying, okay, I developed that.
Very good. Maybe we talk about this a little bit later, especially when we talk about how to attract investors and what to tell them. You also won a few prizes. We go into that not so much deeper, but maybe let me know, what is it like to be in the Hall of Fame of the Entrepreneur of the Year? What happens? Is it like your face somewhere in Actually, in the Hall of Fame of rock and roll? Is it a little bit like that?
It should be like this. It isn't. My face was there when there is yearly the Entrepreneur of the Year is handed out to the craziest entrepreneurs out there. And but it's very interesting what people you meet when you're in this community and what places you get invited to. You're flying to Monaco. You're being on ships sailing there and so on.
So
it's quite
you
nice.
Fulfill a little bit of the stereotype.
Star stuff. Yeah.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you so much. We go over to Francesco, and Francesco, it seemed like every time you changed country, you also changed the field a little bit. Almost. So you started out as a chemical engineer in Italy, then did your PhD in systems biology and bioinformatics in Sweden, and then you were also a visiting scholar in San Diego. I think there you did the same stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And then you had 3 patent applications, and somehow out of these a company emerged called Ellipta. Where does the name come from? What does Ellipta mean?
It was a long discussion between all the, let's say, the team that eventually incorporated the company, and it doesn't mean anything. It's just when we looked for a cool name that has very few Google hits and that the .com domain was available, that was the ones that attracted the most apps.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is how you learn how to name your company. Also, good insight.
Yeah.
Good insight. Yeah. Just a quick comment.
Yeah, so we named our company Magical, and when we went to Tanzania to work, many people were confused because Magi stands for water in Swahili, and Co for collaboration, community, corporation. But to them, Magical was an oven. So it's really important to check the word before you actually use it. But anyways, we stuck by it.
Okay, and also a little pitch. What do you do actually? What's your goal?
So we're working in molecular diagnostics. We attempt to prevent cancer mortality by developing a new type of urine test, which is based on the metabolism of cancer rather than genetics. And we apply it primarily in kidney cancer to know if the cancer has come back after surgery as early as possible, because today clinicians do not have really non-invasive way to know this.
All right. And Francesco, you were also named 35 under 35 of the MIT Technology Review. How does it happen? Does someone call you and say, well, you're under 35 and you're doing cool stuff. Now you're in here, or how does it work?
Yeah, it's a long selection process actually. So you get nominated by a peer. You can also self-nominate, to be honest. So, and then it lasts around 7 months. So you send in an application, then they call you back, and you have an interview, and then you get selected. Yeah.
Okay.
It was in Europe, by the way. It was not. Just to humble it down.
Okay, we humble it down. But you raised 5 million euros as well, which is good because then we will talk about a little bit more later how he did that and maybe what you can learn from that. All right, so you know our expert panel a little bit closer now. You might have noticed that our experts are all men. So usually there, of course, are also female founders. Are there any female founders amongst us? This has to change. There? One? Ex-founder. So what are you doing now?
Well, when I was terribly young and terribly crazy, I was fun. Right now, I'm working for Jessica.
For a what?
GlaxoSmithKline.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. It went to the dark side. It's okay.
Oh, no.
I was joking. So, okay, I think this has to change a little bit. And I think you were also telling me that you actually do know quite a few interesting female founders. So we just want to also encourage the ladies in the room that this is not an all-boys situation, and that, of course, when you want to become a founder, you should basically go crank as well. And those guys, they're very happy also to support you and to help. So if you have any questions regarding that, please don't hesitate to also go in the spotlight. Yeah, Summer.
I keep stealing the mic, but so yeah, one of our co-founders is actually she's named Serena. So we formed Magical together. She's not here because she's raising her baby, which was born a few months ago. But otherwise, I think she would have been happy to come here as well and share her thoughts. So she's also doing her PhD, also managing a lot of the magical work. So a totally superhuman person, actually, and was actually helping doing a lot of the logistics while raising her baby. So we couldn't do much without her. So I think it's very important we raise awareness and kind of close this gap a bit more moving forward.
Yeah, thank you. So maybe we start right with you because, Samar, what's quite interesting in comparison to the other three on the panel is that you started a social business, basically. So how would you just quickly describe the difference between a social entrepreneur and I'd say a business entrepreneur?
So to backtrack a bit, sorry, this may take up a bit,
Sure.
but there's no such thing as a legal framework for a real social business. There's no real social enterprise. You go from charity to limited company, and there's a space in between where you could be kind of a mix. But we chose to be a limited company with 100% asset lock, which means that all of our money does not be shared through dividends. It goes right back to the business for the help of the social impact of what we're trying to achieve.
Mm-hmm. And you said that your background and your research just contributes a little bit to the actual product. But how basically what happened that you said, well, I want to become a founder, and I think now is the time to do that?
So I'm actually an accidental co-founder. So it's not through my PhD that led me to this field, actually. I actually was volunteering a lot whilst in Cambridge. Cambridge is a beautiful ecosystem for a lot of things, a lot of people doing various things, and a lot of societies, et cetera, et cetera. And one thing I volunteered for was called iTeams, and this is a platform where they take innovations coming out from the university and they couple them with research or students to see if there's a market for such innovations. And the one that I volunteered for was development iTeams, where it looks at a development context. And within this, I was calling a lot of people in Africa and India and Pakistan and really trying to understand the water problem. And it was pretty ridiculous, the stuff that I heard. Some people spend 30% of their stipends on clean water. We spend that on rent. So there's a big inequality there. So it really motivated me to get involved.
Okay, so first learning, if you want to become a founder, it doesn't necessarily have to do with your PhD, but you can also just, be interested in tackling a certain problem. Is there anything, maybe from your PhD studies, and I will ask you that as well, that helped you, like that you sort of said, well, research and the research environment helps me now in being a founder? Yeah,
so I think actually the technology I was aware from, because I did similar technology in my undergrad. I was volunteering at a lab during my undergrad degree, so I really understood the technology. So when I saw that it was happening again and now it's more advanced, it really piqued my interest. But again, the mindset of doing research where you're very independent and trying to be very resourceful kind of translate into a startup as well.
Okay. Bernhard, I would like to ask you, so now you found a way to deal with this crazy Airstream, and then how or at what point did you know that you want to take it a step further, that you not only want to use this to get your PhD, but to also, you know, start a company?
This was mainly in discussion with my colleague, who is now my co-founder, and a couple of friends. And we thought about it might be a good idea, and then we came to the Center for Entrepreneurship here from the TU, and they basically sent us away with, no, that will never gonna work. So we went back a year later thinking about it. We went to a trade show and we talked to a lot of people about the technology. So we produced special nozzles that helping water processes, mixing processes, and so on. And we had quite an impact on the trade fair. So we had kind of the first customers before we even started the company. So this is how we came up with the idea, okay, this is a viable idea. Let's go into the details. Okay, perfect. So you also have to have like the motivation or the interest in becoming a founder. You could have said, well, I want to, you know, I want to stay in academia and do more research. So what sort of was it that you said, no, I want to do like my own company? I think it was the time in the PhD, because you work really for yourself and your little team, and this is a lot of fun for me. So I really like to tackle problems my way and to tackle problems. I'm a very curious person. So this was the main driving behind starting your own company.
Okay, very good. Maybe we go to Carsten. Carsten, maybe you just quickly take us through the process from PhD to founder. What were because we heard also with Bernhard that there was like a setback. It always sounds very smooth, and like your CV also sounds like whoa, 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 whoa. Were there like any bumps in the road, or like how did it all happen?
It's completely bumpy. So I'm doing things out of fun and curiosity. So that's why I also changed very often. I didn't want to stay just in biology. I did also chemistry. I didn't want to only do this. So I did economics. And afterwards, when I had like plenty of titles, no one wanted to hire me, because like I was very, very well educated, and you don't find like entrance into bigger companies like that. So I started consulting at the brink of, or like between science and business, because this is what I knew best. So I did that 2.5 years. And then I actually changed to one of my customers, because they were searching for a CEO at that time, and I had to relocate also for that. So I completely changed again what I was doing. And I was then working with new technologies, and coming from being someone who tells people like half knowledge for money as a consultant, I ended up in now having responsibility for people and so on and so forth. And afterwards, after I started this job, I actually got a research proposal on my desk. And this research proposal wasn't funded. It was about a technology that no one really was able to communicate, and it did wound healing. However, it didn't get funded. And so they asked me, do you know why it doesn't get funded? And I said, yeah, sure, the product is shit. So I wouldn't fund it either. And they said, do you know how to do better? And I said, yes, I do. However, I want the work group who's researching on it in order to head the work group and then make a product out of it. So the research institution that came to me was from the Leibniz Association. And they said, as long as you get the money, we don't care. You can have the work group too. So I was ending up with a work group in plasma physics. I have no clue about plasma physics. However, I had good people, and I think this is really important learning. You don't have to work where your PhD or whatever is leading to. You have a team, and it's all about this team, and you have to search for people that their expertise is adding something to the team. And my role is not giving like technology. My role is more like steering, talking to investors, getting the whole technology in the world. So this is more what I'm doing. And so my road was very, very bumpy. And after 18 months, and after getting the funding from the federal ministries and so on and so forth, we funded the company. And funding out of a research institution means that everyone is going out of the research institute, which is not in a favor of a research institute, because they're losing scientists. You have to think about this. So I took everyone out in the company, and from then on we started the ship sailing towards getting our approval as a medical device.
All right. So what's interesting here is, and I think we heard that with Summer and with you, so there is this role where you're more, you know, you're the leader, you're the strategist, you're doing the connections and whatever. But when you, like, let's say, a little bit like Bernhard, when you have an idea and you think, ooh, that there could be something, there could be a product, and you're really close research-wise, it's a little bit different. Was it the case for you, or Francesco, how would you say was the process for you? Was it a little bit more like Bernhard or like the other two?
I would say pretty much like Bernhard. Yeah, it's well, not knowing the details of your life, but I assume it started off out of my PhD research project, and I got help through the innovation system of the university where I was studying. Met the right people, talked to the right people, got the right level of funding from the right public bodies. So in hindsight, everything is linear. But yeah, and then the intellectual property that we generated through the discoveries was what became the core technology at Ellipta.
So you said basically, I talked to the right people, I did this and that. So once you had the idea, like let's say I have a great idea, I think, oh, this, we should do something with it. What are the next steps? Like, what are you actually, what are you actually doing?
So that brings me back 4 years ago. I was a last year PhD student, and I will explain the story also a bit later in the session. But briefly, it was not really me bringing forward the idea. It was my PhD supervisor who pushed me to do this. And I think that was the key. He had already spun out 4 biotech companies out of his research lab, so he was very well experienced, and we had a very good connection. Despite the fact that he was managing a group of 80 PhD students and postdocs, one of the largest in that university. So that was the key. He was there to hold my back. The innovation system was great in the sense that it made me, not really, I must say, they were decent people, but I mean, they made me question how we think about technology. It's like when you move into business, you rephrase everything around the problem that you're trying to solve, not around what your technology solves. I think that's the key aspect, and try to understand that, okay, because it's the people who have the problem that are going to pay. It's not the technology that's going to pay itself, right? So, and was the key switch, and I only learned that by talking to people who actually do business. There's no way the scientists are, unfortunately, educated or trained to do that. So that's what I mean by talking to the right people. Yeah,
I think that's an important part, because, as you said, you're not, you're not trained in maybe how to write a business plan, or who are the right people to talk to, what are the next steps. So basically, you said first it's good to have sort of like a mentor. Would you describe your PhD
Absolutely,
like a mentor who guides you a little bit through the process? And then maybe you also said you had the help of the university startup incubator, exactly. And this incubator, in the course of your I would say the founding process, like what did they do? How did they help you, and in what way was it helpful?
In a lot of ways. So when you think about starting a company, you basically stand at the beginning of a path which is completely oblivious to you, because, I mean, I was a PhD student. I had no idea about business, about customer relationship, business plans. personal employees, whatever. I had no idea about this. So you need to talk to the right people to get everything sorted out. So the most important thing is just start doing it, talk to the right people. They will help you with your questions. And even so, in the beginning, when we were at startup events, talking to other startups, to other founders, they always told us, okay, no matter what you're doing, no matter what your topic is, you all have the same problems, so talk to each other. I found out that to be true maybe a year later, because I was not believing it in the beginning, but basically this is the case. Everybody has the same problem. Everybody's standing at the beginning of a path thinking about, okay, what will I do next? And you need to talk to the right people, and the universities and the incubators will help you through that process because they know how to do it.
Who, for instance, would be the right people? Like, concrete example.
Depending what you're looking for. So regarding your product, I would suggest go to trade fairs, talk to potential customers, talk to the ones that have the problem and see if they really want to pay money for that. Regarding founding, talk to other founders, go to startup events, and talk to incubator staff at the universities and other incubators. So they will help you definitely.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And sure.
So what's really helpful is also getting into accelerators. So you need to just like write down your idea on 3 pages or something like that and get into a program, and they will assist you, they will help you. What's also very, very, very helpful, and we are all in Berlin here, but they're all over Germany and Europe, is business plan competitions. Because business plan competitions are guiding you through getting into a business. So you start with an idea, and everyone's starting with an idea, and then you have a little handbook of 100 pages, and you're getting like you are forced to think about every process in the company once at least. And I found this very, very helpful for people that start something new, to have like this guided process. There are also people you can talk to, mentors you can talk to. So this is what helped us very much. And when you're winning, then you get you get into media, you get prize money, and so on and so forth. So this helps your little idea to grow.
Mm-hmm. Francesco, first, you had another remark?
First of all, thanks for asking the question, because I remember when I started, I was desperate for practical advice, and people like us right now, I realize we tend to talk a bit vaguely because we know about exactly what we're talking about. So I was nodding at him, but I mean, I realized that that's a great point. We did the same for a competition. It was called One Start. It was active. Unfortunately, I think it's defunct now. It was in London for life sciences. It was great. Writing grants, innovation grants, is also a great way to do the same thing. We did in Sweden. We have the Swedish innovation agency called Vinnova that has also small grants like 50,000 crowns, 5,000 euros. And that process, the reviews that you get, helps you a lot formulating like what exactly am I solving. To add on the talking to the customer is probably the #1 rule probably in the beginning. A great question is like, if this was free, would you take it? Underappreciated question, but probably the single one that you want to know. Because there are a lot of people that encourage you like, yeah, this sounds interesting, but will they answer yes to this question? Because that makes the whole difference between a business and a good idea.
Very good. Yeah, and Samar, you wanted to add something?
I have a few points to add. So in my world, the social enterprise world, you would be surprised by how many people are willing to help you. We approached the universities, for example. There's an Anglo-Ruskin University in Cambridge. We got students to work on our animations for our internship project, working with research students at the university, students doing master's projects, looking into manufacturing methods in Tanzania for us. Also, we approach a few corporations who are now, or businesses, big tech companies who are giving us expertise pro bono because they want to engage their employees, and their employees want to use their skills for something that's very helpful. So you really have to seek these partnerships and just be very open. The second point was about the grants. I think it's very important to seek grants early on, especially for us. Investors come a bit later. So to write a good grant, I think we got feedback recently. We won a grant recently, and the feedback we got that we answered every question, whereas the others didn't, which is the only reason we won this grant, apparently. So make sure you answer all the questions, repeat the keywords, Maybe you even repeat parts of the questions just so that you don't go on a tangent when you're answering these questions. Finally, for us, it works a bit differently. We find in our environments, when you give a product for free, most of the time it's not utilized. Many of the locals think that it's cheap or it's not worth any money or it becomes furniture. So that's where coming and understanding your customer is very important for us. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. Bernhard, did you write grants at first, or did you go right in with the investors?
No, we wrote a grant, so we had an Exist-Forschungstransfer, which is quite a big grant from the German or European government. Very, very complex process to get everything started. You had a long application, then you had a jury where you had to present and pitch, and then in the end you had to discussions, questions, answers. So it was a very long process, but gives you a good starting point and gives you a very, very good feedback on your idea and on your business idea.
And how did you mainly learn about like which grants are out there? Is it like a normal like Google search, and when you're interested in it, you'll find them, or how do you find, you know, which grants can I even apply for?
For us, it was the startup incubator of TU Berlin, definitely. So they gave us the guidance to what kind of grants would help us and who to talk to get some ideas. They connected us with teams who already have these grants, so they helped us. So I can encourage this, what you said, not only in the social sector, but in every else sector. Go start writing emails or calling people. They are extremely helpful. I know the feeling sitting in front of the telephone trying to call somebody and thinking about, okay, I will just calling him to get an answer for my question, what can I give him back? So you feel bad about this call, but just do it. We had, with our team, we have once a month, we have a big team meeting in Friday afternoon. Sometimes we invite other startups companies to pitch their ideas, and then we discuss about this afterwards, just for fun, because we're interested in this as well. So yeah, feel free to contact and call people.
So you have to be a little bit brave and just do it, and people are usually, probably people like when they're seen as an expert and you ask them something.
Yeah.
Is that your experience?
Yeah, this is my experience as well. I think the very hardest part is just start doing it. So stop thinking about it, start doing it.
And you said, which was interesting, usually all startups or young companies have the same problems. So let's say for you, the three most common ones. What do you think are the three most common ones? And then we figure out with the other three how to tackle them.
The three most common points so get the right team together. So you have to work with those people. You see them more than your significant other. So you have to connect with them, get the right expertise at the table. So the team is, I think, the most important factor. From this point onwards, talk about who is doing what and who is expecting what, not only in the business section, but also in his private life. If you're starting a company with two people and one of them wants to go to Australia afterwards, this won't work out. So you have to talk about this one in advance. It's like a marriage. And get all these things sorted out within the team to get the conflict in the team out of the way in the very, very first phase.
So it's actually quite leadership topics, I would say. So how was it for you to, like, all of a sudden not only, you know, be your own boss, but actually deal with people and maybe lead a team or be part of a team? What were your most important learnings?
Being empathic is very, very important. Like, to understand where everyone's coming from, why they're doing this. Actually, we kind of fucked up in our team too. Because in our work, like, the first founder of the company left the company when we got our first funding, because he was more like, he was used to work in a scientific surrounding, not in a company. He wasn't happy in a company. He didn't think we would be ever a company. So he went on until he knew or noticed, oh no, there are now investors putting money in there. It's getting real. I don't want this. I want projects. I want to work like a year on this topic, a year on this topic, and so on and so forth, without being responsible for something. And this is okay too. So you have to deal with that. You have to really, like, when it comes to leadership, what's also very interesting, the entrepreneurs, like the people owning the company are different than people you hire. You will be up until 12 at night and working on a problem, while everyone else that's hired is probably staying an hour longer or so because they like working there or so, but then they tell you, I have a family, I need to go home. And you have to deal with that situation too. It's okay because they're hired. They should be, they should not have to work as entrepreneurs. They should have to like what they're doing and so on. And it's very counter. It's not very helpful to treat them as entrepreneurs, as we found out.
Did you also have to learn to delegate, like giving up certain things that you thought because you're the founder, you know best, but then you also have to sort of give responsibility to others? Was it the case for you as well?
Partially, yes, because like one of my co-founders, Tobias, so what we did is we shared our roles. He's my COO, like something like the first officer on a ship, and he's doing all the internal stuff. So he's dealing with all the micromanagement shit that I'm not like good at dealing with. So also here, find what you like doing and find people that like doing the things that probably you don't like doing, because then you can like put your horsepower on the street. And for me, I'm more like doing strategy. I'm out. I'm speaking. I'm trying to get like the whole world on the train of co-plasma for wound treatment, which he wouldn't like because he's not extroverted like I am. He would be sweating, speaking in front of people and so on because he doesn't like it. So we kind of found like perfect positions. And also when we're hiring people, I'm not looking too much on like good marks and everything. I'm looking on the person and I ask them, so what do you like doing? What do you enjoy doing? And if that's a fit, that's way more important than having like several A's on your degrees.
Okay. I just maybe stop here and ask Francesco, because it's quite interesting. Were there any times, recent times in the beginning, we're talking challenges, where you said, why am I doing this? Did you ever have this, or not really?
Yeah, I would be surprised if anyone replies no to this question. I mean, throughout, from the day you start your PhD, I guess many of us have questioned this. So, when you look in hindsight, everything is linear, right? The point is that there are many times in which you question, why are you using your time in this way? I was also trained as an engineer, so it's really difficult not to be fidgety about the fact that you're not really doing anything. And then you have these single events, like the first time that you get funding, and it can happen 9 months afterwards, and a public funding, a grant, that you even started on this. Then the whole work that you've done in 9 months, all of a sudden seemed worth the time. But you know, just before that, the day before, you're like on the verge of collapse. I mean, this is never going to fly. I had not the fortune to have a co-founder. I mean, sorry, I take it back. My mentor was a co-founder, but he was never operational. He was my professor. So I did a lot of solo work in the beginning, like for like almost 1.5 years, until I met Carl, who would become the CEO of the company. And that helped a lot because I didn't have any of these founder issues. Otherwise, it's, I think, 50% of the reason why it typically startups don't work. And I guess like that puts obviously like a lot of strain on you as an entrepreneur, because like you're always questioning, what are my opportunity costs? What am I missing out? But, you know, then there is these single events that justify everything you've done before. And until then, until I found Carl, I was like, this is never going to fly, because it's simply too much stuff that I'm not qualified to do. And the first candidate that said no to me as CEO, it was one of the most burdensome days of my career, because it was like, okay, I can't carry on. Like, it's simply too much work. And we were so close. And then 1 week later, we got the other person to to jump on board. So
Carsten said, which was interesting, he said, well, you have to sort of go with your strengths and also find the people who maybe do the stuff that you don't like. But do you think there's like a personality trait to be a founder? Is there something inherently founderish in a person, or do you think everyone can become and be a founder if only you find the right team?
I would need data to
Okay.
say this.
So you can't.
I think there is certainly some personality traits there.
Like what? Like what?
I wouldn't be able to pinpoint them. I mean, certainly, I met a lot of founders, and they all look very, probably very optimist, I would assume, and a bit oblivious or not so worried about the fact. Everybody in the beginning tells you it's a really long path. Don't listen to them because they are actually right. But if you think about it, it's gonna crash. You know, a PhD at least has a duration, at least in Sweden. So.
Yeah. Bernhard, you can add to this.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Samar first.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think we get this cliche image of a CEO in the media, very, very outspoken. But like Carsten said, you can separate the work and kind of use your strengths accordingly. So I don't think it's an actual trait. I think it relies down to the passion of the individual. I think I said this earlier, but we all do what we do because we're very passionate. We're not going against who we are. And it's worthless to put a square peg in a round hole, right? If it's not going to work, it's not going to work. Stay true to yourself, and if it's for you, then just pursue it.
Bernhard, are you passionate, when we talk about passion, are you passionate being an entrepreneur, or are you passionate about your product?
I was and am passionate for the product. So I was not a kind of person who was like to start a company just because for starting a company, but for really solving a problem and getting the product on the market. And yeah.
And you wanted to add as well something. I
think
recall.
regarding the founder personality, I think everybody can be the founder if you have the right team. Of course, you need some personas on the team, so you need somebody who's able to stand in front of people, pitching and getting investors' attention, getting public attention. But you also need other people who are really tackle the problems on the technology way. So you need a good mixture of people. You can't do it all on your own. It's basically way too much work. I totally agree.
A quick remark.
Just quick adding. So people that are good founders, they embrace certain topics. Something like risk-taking. They're good at dealing with risk and benefit. You need to have that. You need to take responsibility and taking responsibility and not saying, okay, so maybe I will take that. And you need to be you need to be stress resistant and good at dealing with problems, because this is what you will be doing. And the best way in dealing with problems is accepting that your role is to solve problems every week. So we are solving, I see that because our employees, they're having a hard time when there are problems. So they're thinking, oh, damn it, and they're taking it home and next day, and you can really see how they're eaten up by if there is a problem. So for me, it's just, when will be the next problem to solve? So because this is my role.
So actually PhDs are quite well prepared for that because they're dealing with problems all the time too, right?
And they're used to wait very long for benefits. So when you're doing a PhD, and you all know that, you will be waiting for 2 years, and after 2 years, you still think, oh, I'm not sure if I get this PhD. And this is actually the same thing that you have as a founder, because you can have long distances of, oh, is this going to work? I'm not sure, but I'm still passionate. I'm still doing it. And then in the end, like you said, it will get through because you held on to it. And this is then the passion that investors want to see. This is, as longer you live and the more years your company is living, investors also know, okay, they went through a lot of shit and they still survived. So they're really good at dealing with these situations. And this is why the team then becomes so important, because the team the people in there. It's the idea is important, but the team, a very good team, can make a mediocre idea to a success. A bad team will sink the ship with a very good idea.
Yeah, you're all nodding your heads. So I think what was interesting as the learning was the main challenges, especially in the beginning, besides like getting information and, you know, writing a business plan and all these things, basically boil down to the human factor. Like, how do you find good people to do it with? How do you basically self-manage, you know, and deal with setbacks and stuff like that? So once you figured that out, let's say you now all know how this works somehow. Now we're talking money. So you already mentioned it. So first we start writing grants. We figure out, okay, there are these grants. We talk to people. Okay, maybe we got some grants to start off the whole thing. Now we need more money. And Francesco, I start with you. How did you get these 5 million?
Mostly public funding.
Mm-hmm. Public funding.
Yeah,
interesting.
I mean, and I think we were just briefly discussing with the other people here in the panel. It seems to be a very common way. So I guess, like, I don't know Germany itself, but for instance, like Sweden has a very strong agenda when it comes to innovation. So they have a number of agencies that will give you grants. Most likely, your own university has some small grants in the beginning to just, you know, get some stuff done. In our case, it was like that. The first one was actually Chalmers Ventures. I was in a university called Chalmers University of Technology. And they gave us, I think, the equivalent of 2,000 euros to do some verification work. Then they actually invested money. So that was actually a private equity investment in their case. But it was like very small money, 30,000, but it was enough to file the patents. And then we got funding from the Swedish Innovation Agency, the equivalent of 150,000 euros. And then after that, 1 year later, we decided to found the company, to incorporate. So for 2 years, we actually operated under the umbrella of the university. I think this is extremely common.
Okay, so you start with the more public funding grants, and then, but then let's say, okay, you know, the well sort of maybe empty at some point with the public funding, and then okay, what do you do then? How does it concretely look like?
Yes and no. I mean, I still maintain that public funding plays a big role also afterwards. I mean, we got a grant from the European Union, SME Instrument Phase 2, I think many people here are familiar with, which was 2.3 million euros. Okay. So that's 40% of what we raised. And it's, you know, it's maintaining the company, which makes no revenues because we're in healthcare. Before that, yes, we got private equity. It was the equivalent now of 1.5 million euros. And the first, I mean, if you want to look at the handbook, they would say that you should start with business angels, so very deep-pocketed individuals who share your passion, believe in the team. They don't really maybe understand the tech, but they trust you. And they've seen similar business. They're there to help you and make sure that their investment doesn't go vain. But I mean, and they will. But we didn't use them. For instance, we went with small, you know, venture firms in Sweden that are quite common. They just give you what's called a seed round, so up to, let's say, €500,000 euros. So that kept us going.
And how do you, or how did you find, like, let's say, how do you find a business angel?
Do you have a business? So first of all, let's get all T-shirts with "We make no revenues" because we're in healthcare. Because like we are too, and we're not making revenues. It's a very long time until you get something out. So we actually started also with funding from the federal ministry and so on, and got our first business angel. We started with a business angel actually. Business angel are experienced people that have money that are giving you something around 50 to 150,000 euro for your company. For shares, of course, they want a part of your company. I would say, like, depending on the business angel, like I wouldn't hand out more than 15% or so. And they're putting on one hand money and on the other hand expertise in the company, because they're usually way more experienced and they're focused, they should be focused on your company. And what's important about investors is that they they need to trust you. And I think the business angel is the first and maybe the only investor group that really is on a personal level with you. At least this is in our case the case. And it's really on personal trust, and if they think you're able to steer the ship also through rough waters. And as you all might know, there are also other, but I'll hand it over to you now to take your business angel stories, but there are also other ways to get investment in the company.
We will come to that later, maybe with Bernhard, but you, no, you start.
I was just going to backtrack, actually. So for us, we work in a social space. Getting angel investors is not as easy. It's a very non-dilutive space, meaning you need a commercial viable product before anyone wants to risk giving you money. So for us, we rely heavily on public grants and public funding, even crowdsourcing at times. So for us, I guess, once the investor has seen, just to backtrack. So the investor that you are pursuing, if you're trying to do a social startup, needs to have the same mission and values as your startup itself. There's no point into getting an angel investor and turning the whole thing into a full profit, because then you're going back into what you're trying to do initially. So you have to be careful selection of your angel investors. So,
and there's like, let's say, is there like a list of business angels or a list of investors? Like, how do you, like, if I wanted to find a business angel now for whatever, how would I find them? Google business angel, or just, yeah? Yeah?
So it's actually, for business angels, at least in Germany, it's quite easy because they're, it's called Band. It's a business angel network, and you will go to meetings and so on, and then meet business angels. Also, very important is to be exposed as a company, to get into media, to go on stage somewhere, to get invited, to go to meetings, whatever, because investors will sit around there and scout for new technologies, new whatever. You will get, as more exposed you will get contact to meetings of investors, to venues where you can pitch, like pitching competitions and whatever. You will see them in your network, and they're very prominent. So there's no way to miss opportunities to meet investors, at least for us.
Yeah, how was it? How did that happen with your company?
Basically the same, yes.
Yeah.
So you have to keep in mind that it's not only you looking for investors, it's also investors looking for investments, so that from time to time they're actively looking for you and seeking and getting in contact with you. We got to know our investors with a pitch competition at the trade fair in Hanover. We talked to a lot of investors. We've been in the very beginning to a lot of startup events. So those startup events are very good to get you some exposure, to speak to potential investors. They're not good for getting customers, you can forget that. Customers you find somewhere else, but you will find investors, you will find knowledge in these startup events, and this will basically help you getting in touch with the investors, getting meetings with the investors, and then they will sit with you together on a table and they will discuss with your team. So what are you doing? Who is doing what? What are your goals? And at this point, you have to make sure that not only for social startups, but for other startups as well, that the values that you and your team represent are the same for you and your investors. So my team and I, we definitely thought we want to have a long-standing company and not having an exit in 5 or 4 years. So this is why we were seeking for strategic investors who want to get the long way with us. So this is some questions that you have to ask the investors as well.
And what do you know now about maybe pitching and about talking to investors that you didn't know when you first approached them? Like, what were like your 3 main learnings when dealing with investors?
Main learning is they won't understand your product as easily as you understand it, because they are not so deep in the technical field. So you need to be able to communicate what you're doing, what problem you're solving, very, very efficient.
So Star Trek, for instance?
For instance. Yeah. Imagine you're at a pitch competition and you have, sometimes there are 40 startups pitching back to back. So they are sitting investors, they are looking at startups for 2 hours, 3 hours straight, and you have to be the one that they keep in mind. So it's not all about what are you presenting, but how you are presenting it. Do you catch the attention of the investor? and then you just need to be open, need to be kind of show what you and your team are doing, and then it'll work out from my experience.
Francesco, you want to add something?
Yeah, very practical. Use numbers. One of the things that I realized over time, especially when you come from biology where it's not very quantitative most of the time, is that you say many people have this problem, and investors are trained at crunching numbers in their head extremely fast. So if you say like, Samara has done like 50, you have 62,000 cases every year of kidney cancer. That completely, okay, you're already giving them information about how to calculate the market size. It's really important that you use numbers. And the second piece of advice is like, yes, I agree completely. Explain the technology is essentially impossible if you don't, unless they're in your industry. So I know it's tough as a scientist in the beginning because we always use, like in our papers, it is suggestive that it may be concluded because we don't want to take a stance because of course that's what science is about. We never know the truth. But there you have to say something very bold without over-promising, without under-delivering, but say something bold, like we do wound healing using a cold plasma technology. Okay, that's not open for hires.
Maybe to add something that will hurt all us scientists and the tech stuff and guys, have a business case. Because investors invest because they want to do something with their money and want to get out something. Even if they're strategic, they need a business case. Most investors believe that your technology is great and your technology is working. Because like if it's not working, then you wouldn't be there or your company would have been closed or whatever, or it's very obvious that it's not working. So they're most of the time not so focused on technology and science behind it and so on, which is a problem because as a scientist, we're very thrilled about our science. But the investor needs business cases, needs to understand that you understood your stakeholders. So is something paying money for that? Is something needed? Does someone need your solution to something? And this is what they're really looking for. And if you can't give them a business case, they wouldn't be interested for long.
All right. So one last question before I then open for you to ask questions. So if you could give yourself an advice when you started your company, like in the early stages, what would you basically tell yourself? What advice would you give to yourself a few years before?
So yeah, again, I have this view where I don't think we should think about the past, but I will try to answer the question.
But it helps for the future
Yes,
in
does.
order to deal with...
So one thing to add, actually, so I was at this meeting in Lindau last week where a lot of Nobel laureates were presenting and sharing their stories. And they said pretty much 95% luck, 5% smarts as to why they won the Nobel Prize. So luck and serendipity, we can't put a value on it. But in terms of going back and saying, okay, what could I have done? Well, I would have sought more feedback along the way. Try to learn from my successes, try to learn from my failures. Any grant that I received that I didn't get, email back. Understand why you didn't get that grant, you didn't get that money. Some people will reply, some won't, but just in a general, you need to always constantly improve your business model, improve your product, always consult the market as well to understand your customer very well at each point in time.
Mm-hmm. Any advice you would give yourself?
I would agree to this, and in addition I would say be bold enough to make decisions, even if those decisions hurt sometimes. So if you have problems in the team, if you know that one customer won't work out, don't think about it too much, just make a decision and move on, because you shouldn't be dragged along with some problems that you have in the back of your head.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I think the really biggest mistake we did was what I already told, was not putting enough focus on the wishes and actually the wants of all the shareholders, like of everyone who was in the work group. Because once you hand out shares to someone, you're tied together. Like there's literally, it's really hard to get rid of each other. And because like at some point, like when, like nowadays in our companies, like if we were lucky that it was so early, but in the later stages, it means that you have to literally pay millions of euros that you don't know where you get them from, because no investor will give you money to hand them to another shareholder, so he goes out, or like, at least not in our case. And this will be a really big problem, because then you have like a marriage, and if you don't like each other anymore, I think it's like the highest, it's the biggest reason that startups fail are problems within the founder section, because like you will have to make decisions, and you are a GmbH or a limited or whatever, so you're legally bound to each other. You can't say, okay, I'm getting this investment in, or I'm taking a loan here, or I'm doing whatever. If someone of your shareholders is saying, no, 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 we're not doing this, this can be a full block for the company. You can't take in any money or whatever. So this is really, really, really serious. Think about who you work with. If they're friends, it's nice. Have very good contracts, like very hard contracts. Like if someone wants to leave, like it's always the company first. It's always the people remaining in the company first. Because this will be protection for you and for them to not have a problem shareholder at one point.
I quite like it's quite interesting, because you said this as well. You often compared the company to basically like a marriage or a relationship, which it boils down to. So doing a prenup basically is important. Okay, and Francesco, your advice to yourself?
This may sound contradictory, but I would actually stay in academia one more year. And the reason being that, first of all, academia is, I don't want to offend anyone, free money. Like it's literally no one, it's free time, free money, in the sense that you don't have to return the investment of anyone. And once you get private equity, the clock starts ticking. Every month, I can't disclose how much we pay, but we pay an enormous amount of money. And every month you spend in academia, I mean, of course you have to grab public funding, but I mean, it's a lot easier to just keep going. But with a twist, I wouldn't do research, I would generate data, but not based on my idea, but based on solving a very specific problem. Like once I figured out that the problem that the surgeons had is to know that kidney cancer is coming back 9 months later than they wanted to, it's very easy to design a study, an experiment, to test that in academia. And then you can grab that data and show it to an investor, look, we have a solution that solves this problem. Right? Of course, then it depends on who holds the intellectual property. In Sweden, we have a very, I would say, favorable legislation. We own it as researchers. But I mean, in that sense, it's great, because you generate data without using any private money. And data is the value driver in our industry, in the life science industry. So if you can use very applied study designs, then you can get, I could have gotten so much more out of that year. And instead, I took the plunge.
Okay, very well. So now the floor is yours. You know a little bit about the backgrounds of those four. Are there any questions?
If you have a question, wait, I will bring the microphone to you.
Perfect.
Thank you. So, two questions. Organic grow or venture capital?
Sorry, I didn't understand.
Organic grow or venture capital, which one is better? And the second one would be quick team, small one, or systematic, big one? Thank you.
Okay, so did everyone understand the question? Okay, so first, maybe we start first, organic grow, basically like you start slowly with, and the other one is you get the money and a lot of money.
And then bigger teams versus smaller teams.
Okay.
It depends on what you want. So if you're taking venture capital, you need to know that venture capital wants to get out after, depending on the fund, like 5 to 7 years. So there will be, as you said, a clock on the money. This is very exit driven, and the VC will try to do round after round to blow up the whole company, to sell the company to someone. If this is okay for you, which is completely fine, because like it's business success, then that might be an interesting way for you. It's also a hard way because the VC can put a lot of pressure on you. If something's not running well and the VC thinks it's better to not invest any money anymore, he will be out. He will say, I'm not taking part in any series anymore. And this will be a very bad sign for all the other VCs. So you need to be like, you need to think about what people you're taking in, how the fund looks like, how companies look like they're invested in, and so on. So generally speaking, like for IT or so, I think that could be a good solution because it's very quick and you get big and then sold. That might be something. Like bootstrapping would be the other part, like starting slowly, getting in slow money, maybe also with like public funding and so on and so forth. There, the disadvantage would be that you're slower. That means that competitors could be faster than you. That also means that you probably can't file for patents because you don't have the money in the beginning, which is bad in the end. However, you own your company for very long, which means you have a high percentage, you can do what you want, maybe you're quicker that way, and that I think that all depends on what you want to do and what your goal is. Also, like bigger teams, like we're a very small team. We have just, we have 7 employees. These 7 employees are coordinating 21 engineers in 5 other companies. Like we're like something like very lean as a company, which I think is important because when you have like hired 50 people or so, this burns money. Like every month there will be hundreds of thousands of euros just paid for salaries, which can be good because it could be fast for the company. And if there's money, like if you have a Series A of 10 million, you have like 1.5 years of time to do something with that. But if you don't, then this will drag you down. And this could also be a pressure point where you will have a problem in negotiations with investors because the investors will know that you need a solution next month because otherwise. Okay, so this just to wrap this up. Think about what it means to do something.
Okay. Anything you have to add?
Just quickly, I'll play devil's advocate for a bit. So our team, we had 5 co-founders, and we had 5 because we were all students at the time. So we needed to delegate the work, and we were told to have a smaller team was better. But for us, our team works so well that having 5 is not a problem. So I think it's very situational dependent, I would say.
I think it's probably interesting when you go from, like, let's say 5 to 20, because then it's also a management and leadership topic, right? You have to deal with a lot more people. Right? Any more questions?
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you for...
Oh, sorry. I didn't see you, sorry. There you are. Hi.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts. I'm an investment banker, and I want to emphasize on...
there you are.
I came late, but on time still. Now, talking about negotiations, you just mentioned them. In my experience in talking to startups that are technology-driven, they might manage to build the business case using the business model canvas, working with consultants, going through competitions, but actually they struggle when it's about negotiating a term sheet, namely one that is a win-win for the investor and for the tech-savvy entrepreneurs. How did you master to manage a win-win term sheet?
Maybe you can quickly, briefly explain what the term sheet is, and then how you manage it.
The term sheet is kind of a pre-contract between your investor and yourself. So you lay out all the terms that you want to have in the final agreement, just in understandable terms, without having a lawyer looking at it. Negotiation with investors is not easy in the beginning because you're not used to it. At least we were not used to it. We were all engineers. Nobody had background with this. So we, again, started to talk to people. if we were able to show them the term sheets, they will give us some feedback about it. And then we talked to a lot of investors, and in the end we had a couple of term sheets lying next to each other, and basically we could see the differences in between them, and we see what will be a problem in 4 years, what might be a problem now, what kind of liquidation preference you have here and there. So it's a lot of comparison between term sheets, and of course speaking to other founders what they are looking for, what they had in their term sheets, and calling other founders that are already in the portfolio of this investor and ask them, okay, how is it to work with this investor? So this is what we do.
So it's also a little bit more about the human factor again, like does this investor basically fit to the company and vice versa?
Yeah, basically if the investor is getting your shareholder, it's like a marriage again. You're stuck to each other, so you have to find a way to work with each other.
Carsten?
Investors and VCs and so on are not bad people. I think this is something that's...
Thanks for pointing this out.
Really, it's something that founders sometimes think, because like if you when you negotiate with a VC, if you're meeting with a VC, this can be very stressful. They will organize things in a way so it gets stressful for you, because they want to know how can he handle stress? How is he performing when I'm giving him a problem to solve and whatever. These people are not bad people. I'm actually, we have no VCs in the company because I always try to keep them out. But I'm actually friends with a couple of VCs after I met them, because we went out for coffee and now I'm meeting them when I'm in the city. So you just need to understand where they're coming from, what they need. It's like with your product. It's like with everything. Everything and everyone has a need. And if you understand this need, and this is coming to win-win, you can find a solution that maybe is reflecting their needs and your needs. The basis is you need to openly communicate these needs. And it's very easy, like when I do that and I say, okay, so I don't want to sell the company, I don't want an exit in the next 5 years. And everyone is saying, yeah, sure, no problem. And then I will say, okay, this will be part of the contract. I do the call. And then everyone's saying, oh yeah, so I'm not sure if I can take this in the contract, if I get this through. And then I'm knowing, okay, so we don't need to talk about this anymore.
So open communication, being empathetic, and now come on, one of the ladies, please ask a question. We just had guys on stage, we just had guys asking, there she is. Thank you.
Probably also typical, I don't know. What is the average workload and how did it develop over time?
Clear question.
Not as much as you may think, at least in my case. I work my 8 to 9 hours per day and not in the weekends, ever. Right now I'm actually on vacation, which sounds contradictory. but I mean, I don't receive emails, I don't receive calls. It's not as bad. My understanding is if it gets to the point in which it affects your life, and maybe I'm speaking from my cultural legacy in Sweden, then you either not delegating enough or you're prioritizing the wrong things. By my understanding, this is not as... I think there are professions that work a lot more than us, like management consultants, investment bankers, lawyers. So it's not as bad.
I have another approach. I don't differentiate between work and private anymore, because as an entrepreneur, I'm basically constantly working and constantly having free time. So would I consider this here as work or as free time? I don't know. So I'm not doing anything that I'm having sleepless nights over and that I'm very stressed over, but still I'm getting my message out and sitting here and talking probably to interesting people afterwards, or future employees or whatever. And I think it's, for me, it's very hard, which is also a problem for my surrounding, because I don't need vacation. I'm traveling around all the time. I'm traveling to big cities, Europe, US, whatever, talking to interesting people and doing calls and working in nice coffees with my laptop and having phone calls and so on. But this is nothing I really... I would have a hard time if this is something stressful working, or if this is free time. And for me, I got
okay.
a very
So
good feel
I think it's like a very personal, probably a very personal approach. Like what, but I think what the question also meant is there like, are there like waves of workload where you said like in the beginning, like you really have to crank all the time, and then it gets a little bit easier, or and how do you manage that?
Yeah, so it does depend. For our case, again, I was doing my PhD while doing the startup, so it was very difficult at times, specifically because I think for 1 month I had to go to Tanzania and do some market research, business development, speak to the people there, and just really understand how to design this product. So at times it becomes very consuming for me, and other times whilst we're waiting for money and applying, then it kind of slows down. And then you get the pot, and it's right back up, spend it, go back down, and et cetera, et cetera. So for us, we do projects on the go. And I think the key is to set guidelines and delegate, again, like Francesco said, delegate to your team. For us, when I was having a very rough PhD time, somebody else would pick up. So a very understanding team is very important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you also nodded your head. Maybe just one sentence for that, because we're out of time. So, and numbers also okay.
So my current working hours, about 8 or 9 hours a day, sometimes on the weekend. The main difference from PhD to entrepreneur is you don't have this one big project, this one big ball that you want to roll up a hill, but basically you're juggling 50 balls at the same time. So this is the difference that you have in between.
Okay, so I think we're done, because it's already 4 o'clock and we have to finish up on time. One last thing, one sentence. What was, in the end, was the worst career advice someone gave you, and what you would not do? Worst career advice. One sentence, quickly, in the end.
That our technology was too high-tech to use in the developing world.
Okay.
I'm not listening to advices so much, so...
But what was it?
Person,
Yeah. We can skip. A really bad career advice you got.
It's like when someone tells you, you need to do something in order to, you can reflect that and think, okay, is this the right approach for me? Or everyone does that. Is it
also
really
not
like,
good.
Yeah. So if someone giving you these phrases like everyone, we never did that here.
Okay.
Is that meaning it's wrong? No, it's not. It just means that you're lazy.
Bernhard,
or whatever.
One bad advice?
Yeah, what you told as well. So they told us the company will never fly, it will never work. Go to a real career. It's not
a real career.
A real career like in the industry. I have a lot of colleagues from my PhD who are now in the real industry, and they are struggling because companies are closing down. So to go into the industry is not always the most secure option, but it's an option as well.
Okay. And Francesco, last one. You found it?
I said it already. Now that I thought about it, it's a long way. Be prepared.
All right, that's a good final word. Thank you so much, and thanks for you.